The boss's mother froze when she saw her missing daughter's bracelet on the waitress's wrist. The golden light of early evening poured through the tall windows of Lombardi's, the finest restaurant in Manhattan. Catherine Monroe walked slowly beside her son Michael. Her arm looped through his as they made their way past tables draped in white linen. The soft murmur of conversation and the gentle clink of crystal glasses filled the air, but Catherine barely heard any of it. She never did on this day. 56 years old, Catherine carried a beauty that seemed weighted down by sorrow, as if time itself had learned to respect her grief. Her dark hair, now streaked with silver, was pulled back in an elegant twist. Her dress, simple and black, spoke of mourning without announcing it. She'd worn black on this date for 18 years. Michael, at 31, had his father's strong jaw and his mother's soft brown eyes. He owned this restaurant, this whole chain of restaurants, actually. He'd built an empire trying to fill the void. But on this particular evening, none of his success mattered. Tonight was about Emily. It was always about Emily. Table 7, as usual, the hostess asked quietly. Already knowing the answer, Michael nodded. Thank you, Sarah. They'd been coming here for 18 years, every single year, on the exact date Emily disappeared. A ritual of grief. A yearly communion with the ghost of a little girl who'd vanished into a crowded New York street market, leaving nothing behind but questions that still kept Catherine awake at night. Emily had been 10 years old. Just 10. One moment she was there, her small hand tucked safely in Catherine's. The next moment, gone, swallowed by the crowd like she'd never existed at all. The police had searched for months. Catherine had plastered the city with missing posters until her fingers bled from paper cuts. But Emily Monroe had simply vanished. The only thing Catherine had left was a memory. The silver bracelet she'd given Emily just days before her birthday. A delicate chain with a crescent moon pendant. Handcrafted by a jeweler in Brooklyn, one of a kind. Catherine had fastened it around Emily's wrist herself. So you'll always find your way back to me, she'd whispered. But Emily never came back. Catherine settled into her chair, and Michael sat across from her. They didn't need to look at the menu. They never ordered much anyway. This dinner wasn't about food. It was about remembering, about not letting Emily be forgotten, even if the rest of the world had moved on. I'll send someone over right away, Sarah said gently before disappearing. Michael reached across the table and took his mother's hand. He didn't say anything. What was there to say that hadn't been said 1,000 times before? A young woman appeared at their table, moving with the careful nervousness of someone new to fine dining. She was maybe 28, slender, with light brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her uniform was crisp, but she wore it like it didn't quite fit her life. Good evening, she said, her voice soft. My name is Hannah, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you off with something to drink? Catherine glanced up, ready to give their usual order, when the light from the candelabra caught something on the young woman's wrist. The world stopped. Every sound in the restaurant, the conversation, the music, the soft rattle of dishes from the kitchen, all of it faded into nothing. Catherine's eyes locked onto the bracelet on Hannah's left wrist, silver, delicate, with a crescent moon pendant that caught the light and threw it back like a tiny beacon. It couldn't be. Catherine's hand flew to her mouth. Her whole body went rigid. Ma'am. Hannah leaned forward, concerned. Are you okay? Michael noticed immediately. Mom, what's wrong? But Catherine couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Her eyes stayed fixed on that bracelet. That impossible bracelet that she'd watched a jeweler create 18 years ago. The one she'd fastened around her daughter's wrist with trembling fingers, never imagining it would be the last gift she'd ever give her. That bracelet, Catherine finally managed. Her voice barely above a whisper. She pointed with a shaking finger. Where did you get that bracelet? Hannah looked down at her wrist, confusion crossing her face. She touched the pendant gently, the way you'd touch something precious. This. She seemed surprised by the question. I've always had it. It's the only thing I had with me when I arrived at the orphanage. They told me I was wearing it the day they found me. The tears came before Catherine could stop them. They spilled down her cheeks in hot streams. Michael stared at his mother, then at the waitress, his mind racing to catch up. How old were you? Catherine asked, her voice breaking. When you arrived at the orphanage. Hannah shifted uncomfortably. clearly unsure why this stranger was crying over her bracelet. I was 10. It was 18 years ago this month, actually. I don't remember anything from before that. Just fragments, dreams, maybe. Michael felt something crack open in his chest. 18 years ago. 10 years old. A bracelet that looked exactly like the one his mother had described 1,000 times. It was impossible, but sitting right in front of them, wearing that bracelet, was a young woman with soft brown eyes that looked hauntingly familiar. Catherine reached across the table, her hands trembling so badly she could barely control them. What kind of fragments? What do you remember? Hannah looked like she wanted to run. This was way beyond anything in the employee handbook, but something in Catherine's face, the desperate hope, the raw need, made her stay. Just feelings. Mostly, Hannah said quietly. Sometimes I dream about a woman singing. There's always this smell of flowers. Gardenias, I think, and this feeling like I was loved once. Really loved. She touched the bracelet again. This is all I have left of that. Michael's mind was spinning. He looked at his mother, saw 18 years of grief crystallizing into impossible hope, and felt the weight of what was happening settle over them like snow. Catherine stood up slowly, her legs shaking. She looked at Hannah, really looked at her. The shape of her face, the way she held her head, that small birthmark just above her left eyebrow. Emily, Catherine breathed, the name a prayer and a question all at once. Hannah took a step back, her eyes wide. I'm sorry, my name is Hannah Collins. But Catherine was already moving around the table, her hands reaching out like she was touching something holy. I know this bracelet. I had it made. There's only one in the world, and I gave it to my daughter 18 years ago, right before she disappeared. The restaurant continued its elegant dance around them, waiters gliding between tables, wine being poured, quiet laughter from a corner booth. No one else knew that a miracle was unfolding at table 7. No one else could see that after 18 years of searching, a mother might have just found her daughter. Hannah stood frozen, the bracelet suddenly feeling heavier on her wrist. Her whole life, she'd wondered about this piece of jewelry, where it came from, why she'd been wearing it, what it meant. Now, staring into the tear-streaked face of a woman she'd never met, she felt something ancient and familiar stir deep in her chest. A memory, maybe, or the ghost of one. Emily, Catherine whispered again, and this time it sounded like coming home. Michael was the first to move. He stood quickly, gesturing to an empty chair at their table. Please, he said to Hannah, his voice gentle but urgent. Sit with us, just for a few minutes. Hannah looked around nervously. The restaurant was filling up with the dinner crowd. She could see her manager watching from across the room, his expression somewhere between curious and concerned. I really shouldn't. I'm working, she started, but Michael was already walking toward the manager. Catherine couldn't take her eyes off the young woman. Every detail felt like a puzzle piece clicking into place. The slope of her nose, the way she stood with her weight slightly on her left foot. Even her voice had that same soft quality Emily's had, like she was always afraid of taking up too much space in the world. Just a few minutes, Catherine pleaded. Please. Something in Catherine's face must have convinced her, because Hannah nodded slowly. When Michael returned with the manager's reluctant permission, she lowered herself into the chair like she was sitting on ice. I don't understand what's happening, Hannah said quietly. Michael sat back down, his mind already working through the logistics. That bracelet you're wearing. My mother gave one exactly like it to my sister 18 years ago, the day before she disappeared. Hannah's hand went instinctively to the silver chain. There could be more than one, right? No, Catherine interrupted, her voice stronger now. The jeweler who made it told me it was unique. He designed it specifically for Emily. There's a tiny inscription on the back of the moon. She leaned forward. May I? Hannah hesitated, then extended her wrist across the table. Catherine's fingers trembled as she turned the pendant over, and there it was. So small you'd miss it if you weren't looking. 2 letters engraved in delicate script. Emily Monroe. Catherine pressed her hand to her mouth, choking back a sob. What does it say? Hannah asked, though her voice suggested she already knew this was going to change everything. Michael said. seeing it for himself now. Emily Monroe. Hannah pulled her wrist back, staring at the pendant like she'd never really seen it before. But that doesn't mean I could have found it, or someone could have given it to. You said you were 10 when you arrived at the orphanage, Michael interrupted gently. 18 years ago. Can you tell us more about that? Anything you remember? Hannah took a shaky breath. She'd told this story before, to social workers, to therapists, to the few friends she'd managed to make over the years, but never to people who looked at her like she held the answer to a question they'd been asking for nearly 2 decades. I woke up in a hospital, she began. They said someone had found me wandering near St. Joseph's orphanage, confused and unable to tell them my name. I had the bracelet and the clothes on my back, but no family came looking for me. She paused. They figured I'd been abandoned. Catherine flinched at the word. The doctor said I had amnesia, Hannah continued. Probably from trauma. They kept me in the hospital for a week, hoping my memory would come back or someone would claim me. But nobody did. So they sent me to St. Joseph's. And you never remembered anything? Michael asked. Nothing about before. Hannah shook her head. Just fragments, like I said. Feelings more than memories. Sometimes I dream about a garden full of white flowers. There's always this woman singing, but I can never see her face clearly. And there's this feeling of safety. You know, like I was loved. She looked down at her hands. But that's all. The doctor said some memories might never come back. Catherine was openly crying now. I looked everywhere for you. Every hospital, every shelter, every orphanage within 100 miles. How did I miss you? St. Joseph's is outside the city, Hannah said softly. Almost 2 hours north. Maybe that's why. Michael was already pulling out his phone. We need to do a DNA test. It's the only way to know for sure. Hannah's eyes widened. A DNA test, This is all happening so fast. I know, Catherine said, reaching across the table to take Hannah's hand. The young woman didn't pull away. I know this must be overwhelming, but please, I've been searching for my daughter for 18 years. If there's even a chance that you're Emily, I need to know. We need to know. Hannah looked between them. This elegant woman with tears streaming down her face, and this successful-looking man who was watching her like she might disappear if he blinked. Part of her wanted to run, to go back to her small apartment and her simple life where she didn't have to think about impossible possibilities. But another part of her, a deeper part, felt something stirring, like a door in her mind that had been locked for 18 years was finally starting to crack open. Okay, she heard herself say. Okay, I'll do the test. Catherine's face crumpled with relief. Thank you so much. Michael was already making calls, his businessman efficiency kicking in. I know a lab that can do it quickly, tomorrow morning. If that works for you. Hannah nodded numbly. I have the morning shift off. Perfect. I'll send a car for you. What's your address? As Hannah gave him her information, Catherine studied her face, memorizing every detail, the way her eyebrows drew together when she was thinking, the nervous habit of tucking hair behind her ear, so many little things that felt achingly familiar. Hannah, Catherine said softly, and the young woman looked up. Whatever the test says, thank you for giving me this hope, even if it's just for a few days. Hannah managed a small smile. I've spent my whole life wondering where I came from. Maybe we both get answers. From across the restaurant, a woman in her early 50s watched the scene unfold with growing dread. Judith Monroe had come to have dinner with a friend, never expecting to see her sister here on this night, and certainly never expecting to see Catherine clutching the hand of a young waitress who wore a bracelet that Judith recognized immediately. Her blood ran cold. After all these years, after all the careful lies and buried guilt, that bracelet, that damned bracelet, had come back to haunt her. Judith turned away quickly, her appetite gone. Her hands shook as she gathered her purse. This couldn't be happening. It couldn't be Emily. The odds were impossible. But even as she tried to convince herself, Judith knew the truth in her bones. And she knew that if Hannah really was Emily, if the girl's memory came back, 18 years of carefully constructed lies would come crashing down. She had to do something. Fast. The DNA test took less than 5 minutes. A quick swab of the cheek, a few forms to sign, and then the waiting began. The lab technician promised results within 72 hours, though Michael had paid extra to expedite the process. Now, standing outside the clinic in the bright morning sunlight, Catherine felt the weight of those hours stretching ahead like an eternity. "What do I do now?" she asked Michael, her voice small. "Just go home and wait." Michael looked at Hannah, who stood a few feet away, checking her phone with nervous fingers. An idea formed in his mind. Risky, maybe, but necessary. "Hannah," he called out. She looked up. "Do you have plans today?" She shrugged. "Not really. I was going to catch up on laundry. Maybe binge watch something." "Come to the house instead," Michael said. The words came out before he'd fully thought them through. But once they were out there, he knew it was right. "Come see where we live, where Emily grew up. Maybe it'll help. Jog some memories or something." Catherine's eyes lit up with desperate hope. "Yes, please come. I could show you photographs. Emily's room. We kept everything exactly the same." Hannah hesitated. This was moving so fast. Yesterday, she'd been a waitress with a mysterious past. Today, she might be the long-lost daughter of a wealthy family. It felt like something out of a movie, not real life. "I don't know if that's a good idea," she said carefully. "I mean, what if the test comes back negative? Won't that make it harder?" "Maybe," Catherine admitted. "But what if it comes back positive? I've missed 18 years of your life. I don't want to miss another 3 days." The raw emotion in Catherine's voice cracked something in Hannah's chest. She'd spent her whole life feeling like nobody truly wanted her. And here was this woman, this stranger, looking at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "Okay," Hannah said quietly. "I'll come." The drive to the Monroe estate took 40 minutes, winding through progressively more expensive neighborhoods until they finally turned onto a private road lined with old oak trees. Hannah pressed her face to the window of Michael's car, watching the manicured lawns and iron gates roll past. "I've never been out here," she murmured. "Not many people have," Michael said. "Mom likes her privacy." When they pulled up to the Monroe mansion, Hannah actually gasped. It was enormous. 3 stories of old-world elegance, with ivy climbing the brick walls and flower gardens that seemed to go on forever. "You live here?" she asked Catherine, who'd ridden in the back seat beside her. Catherine smiled sadly. "It's been in the family for generations, though it's felt more like a museum than a home for a long time." Inside was even more overwhelming. High ceilings with crystal chandeliers, hardwood floors that gleamed like glass, artwork that Hannah was pretty sure belonged in actual museums. She felt suddenly conscious of her worn jeans and cheap sneakers. "Don't worry about any of that," Catherine said, noticing her discomfort. "A house is just a house. What matters is the people in it." She led Hannah up a sweeping staircase to the 2nd floor, down a long hallway lined with family portraits. Hannah found herself scanning the faces, looking for something familiar. Catherine stopped in front of a door painted soft lavender. Her hand rested on the doorknob for a long moment before she turned it. The room beyond took Hannah's breath away. It was a time capsule, a child's bedroom, frozen in place like a museum exhibit. The walls were painted that same soft lavender. A canopy bed sat against one wall, covered in stuffed animals. Bookshelves overflowed with children's books and board games. A desk held art supplies and half-finished drawings. "We kept everything," Catherine whispered. "I couldn't bear to change it. Every night I hoped she'd come home and need her room exactly as she left it." Hannah stepped inside slowly, her heart pounding. Something about this room felt right in a way she couldn't explain. She moved toward the bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines. Charlotte's Web, The Secret Garden, A Wrinkle in Time. Emily loved to read, Catherine said from the doorway. She'd spend hours in here with a book, completely lost in the story. Hannah picked up a worn stuffed elephant from the bed. It was gray, with one ear slightly torn. Without thinking, she hugged it to her chest, and a feeling of comfort washed over her. Old and familiar, like coming home. "That was her favorite," Catherine said, her voice thick with emotion. She called him Mr. Trunk. She took him everywhere. Hannah closed her eyes, clutching the elephant. For just a second, she could almost see it. A little girl with brown hair, curled up in this exact bed, reading by nightlight with Mr. Trunk tucked under her arm. "I remember this," she whispered. Then louder, More certain. I think I remember this. Catherine's hand flew to her mouth. Michael appeared in the doorway just then, his face serious. Behind him stood a woman Hannah didn't recognize. Early 50s, elegant in an expensive pantsuit, with sharp eyes that were currently fixed on Hannah with an expression that looked almost like fear. "Mom," Michael said carefully. "Aunt Judith stopped by. She heard we had a guest." Judith Monroe stepped into the room, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Catherine, darling, you didn't tell me you were entertaining today." "This is Hannah," Catherine said, her arm moving protectively toward the younger woman. "Hannah Collins, We're waiting on test results, but Judith, I think she might be Emily." The color drained from Judith's face. She gripped the doorframe for support, her carefully composed expression cracking for just a moment before she pulled it back into place. That's wonderful," she managed. "Though surely the odds, after all this time." "She has the bracelet," Catherine said firmly. "The one I gave Emily. The one that was one of a kind." Judith's eyes went to Hannah's wrist, to the silver chain and crescent moon pendant, and Hannah saw something flash across the older woman's face, something that looked like guilt, or panic, or both. "Well," Judith said, her voice tight, "I suppose we'll know soon enough, won't we? When do the results come in?" 72 hours, Michael said, watching his aunt carefully. Something about her reaction bothered him, though he couldn't quite put his finger on what. "I should let you all catch up," Judith said, already backing toward the door. "Hannah, it's lovely to meet you, I hope. Well, I hope everything works out the way it should." She disappeared down the hallway quickly, her heels clicking on the hardwood like a countdown. In Emily's lavender room, Hannah held Mr. Trunk and tried to ignore the feeling that Judith Monroe's hope for how things should work out was very different from everyone else's. Hannah stayed for dinner. Catherine insisted. And truthfully, Hannah didn't want to leave. Something about the mansion felt safe, in a way her tiny apartment never had. Like the walls themselves were welcoming her home. They ate in a dining room that could have seated 20, though it was just the three of them. Michael asked her about her life, where she'd worked, what she liked to do. Normal questions that felt surreal given the circumstances. "I've bounced around a lot," Hannah admitted, pushing pasta around her plate. "Never really found my place, you know? I worked in a factory for a while, then a grocery store, a few different restaurants. Nothing ever felt right. Maybe because you were looking in the wrong places," Catherine said softly. After dinner, Catherine showed Hannah photo albums, page after page of a little girl with bright eyes and a gap-toothed smile. Birthday parties, Christmas mornings, a day at the beach where Emily was building a sandcastle. "That was 2 months before she disappeared," Catherine said, touching the photo gently. "She was so happy that day. We all were." Hannah stared at the little girl in the pictures. She looked for herself in that face and found it. The same eyes, the same smile, but the memories wouldn't come. Just that frustrating sense of almost knowing. "I'm sorry," she said. "I wish I could remember." "Don't apologize," Catherine said quickly. "The fact that you're here at all is more than I ever dreamed possible." As the evening wore on, Michael excused himself to make some business calls. Catherine and Hannah moved to the living room, where a grand piano sat in front of tall windows overlooking the gardens. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. "Do you play?" Hannah asked, nodding toward the piano. "I used to," Catherine said. "Not so much anymore. Music felt too painful after Emily disappeared, but lately I've been thinking about it again." She walked over to the piano, running her fingers across the keys. "Emily loved when I played. She'd sit right here on the bench next to me and sing along." Something in Hannah's chest tightened. "What did you play for her?" Catherine sat down at the piano, her hands hovering over the keys. Her favorite was always the simple ones. Lullabies mostly. She pressed down, and the first notes of "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" filled the room. The effect on Hannah was instant and visceral. The melody hit her like a physical force. Her knees went weak, and she had to grab the back of a chair to stay standing. The room seemed to tilt and spin, and suddenly she wasn't standing in a living room anymore. She was somewhere else. Someone else. A bedroom painted lavender. A nightlight shaped like a moon casting soft shadows. A woman sitting on the edge of a bed, her face still blurry but her voice crystal clear, singing, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are." And a little girl, herself, she realized with a jolt, clutching a gray elephant and singing along. "Safe and loved and home. I know this song," Hannah whispered. Tears were streaming down her face, though she barely noticed. "I know it." Catherine's hands froze on the keys. She turned slowly, hope and fear warring on her face. Hannah moved toward the piano like she was in a dream. "You sang this to me every night. You'd sit on my bed and sing until I fell asleep. The words came from somewhere deep, somewhere true. And I'd always ask you to sing it twice because once was never enough." Catherine stood up from the piano bench, her whole body trembling. "Emily always asked for it twice. Always. There was a nightlight," Hannah continued, the memories flooding back now, breaking through 18 years of darkness. "Shaped like a moon. It glowed green in the dark. And I had this elephant, Mr. Trunk, and you'd tuck him in beside me and kiss my forehead and say..." She stopped. The words caught in her throat. "Sleep tight, my little star," Catherine finished, her voice breaking. "Don't let the bedbugs bite." Hannah looked up, meeting Catherine's eyes fully for the first time since the melody started. And in that moment, she knew, not suspected, not hoped, knew with absolute certainty. "Mom," she whispered. The word hung in the air between them for a heartbeat. Then Catherine crossed the distance and pulled Hannah into her arms, holding her with a ferocity that contained 18 years of grief and longing and desperate love. "My baby," Catherine sobbed into Hannah's hair. "My Emily, my little star." Hannah clung to her, memories still cascading through her mind. The garden full of gardenias, drawing pictures at the kitchen table, playing hide and seek in these same hallways. A whole childhood, hidden but not lost. Finally coming home, Michael appeared in the doorway, drawn by the sound of crying. He took in the scene, his mother and this young woman locked in an embrace, both of them sobbing, and felt his own eyes fill with tears. "She remembers," Catherine said, looking at him over Hannah's shoulder. "She remembers, Michael." Michael crossed to them, wrapping his arms around both women, his mother and his sister. Finally, after all these years, his sister, they stood like that for a long time. The three of them holding each other as the last light faded from the garden outside. The piano stood silent behind them, its keys still warm from the song that had broken through the walls of lost memory. In the hallway, hidden in the shadows where the light didn't quite reach, Judith Monroe listened to the reunion with mounting dread. She'd come back to the house planning to stay out of sight, to observe and plan. But now, hearing Hannah remember, hearing her call Catherine, "Mom," Judith felt the ground shift beneath her feet. This was really happening. Emily was back, which meant Judith's carefully constructed lies, 18 years of them, were now a ticking time bomb. She backed away from the doorway quietly, her mind already spinning through options. She couldn't let Emily remember everything. Couldn't let her remember that day at the market. Couldn't let her remember who was really supposed to be watching her when she disappeared. Judith had spent 18 years building her life in this house, being the supportive sister, the devoted aunt. She'd let Catherine suffer under the weight of guilt that should have been Judith's own, and she'd do whatever it took to keep that secret buried, even if it meant destroying the miracle that was happening in the living room right now. The call came 2 days later. Earlier than expected, Michael was in his office downtown when his phone rang with the lab's number. His hand shook slightly as he answered. "Mr. Monroe, we have your results." Michael closed his eyes. "And the test confirms a parent-child relationship between Catherine Monroe and Hannah Collins. The probability of maternity is 99.9%. There's no doubt. She's her daughter." Michael thanked the technician and ended the call. For a moment, he just sat there in his leather chair, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. His sister, Hannah, was really his sister. Emily had come home. He called his mother immediately. Catherine answered on the first ring. "Michael, it's her, Mom. The DNA confirms it. Hannah is Emily." The sound his mother made was somewhere between a laugh and a sob. "Oh my God, oh my God." "Michael, I'm heading home now." "Is she there?" "She stayed over last night. We talked until 3 in the morning. She's upstairs taking a shower." "Don't tell her yet," Michael said, already grabbing his keys. I want to be there. We should tell her together. When Michael arrived home 30 minutes later, he found Catherine pacing the living room like a caged animal, her phone clutched in both hands. "Where is she?" he asked. "Still upstairs, Michael. I can barely breathe. What if she doesn't want this? What if she decides it's too much and leaves?" Michael took his mother's hands. "She won't leave. You should have seen her face when she remembered. She wants this as much as you do." They heard footsteps on the stairs. Hannah appeared in the doorway, her hair still damp, wearing clothes Catherine had lent her. She looked young and uncertain, like she wasn't quite sure what her place was in this house. "Hey," she said softly. "Everything okay?" Catherine's eyes filled with tears. She couldn't seem to find the words. Michael stepped forward. The lab called. "The results are back." Hannah went very still. All the color drained from her face. "And you're her daughter," Michael said, his own voice thick with emotion. "You're Emily Monroe. You're my sister." For a moment, Hannah didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there processing information that rewrote her entire existence. Then her knees buckled, and Michael rushed forward to catch her. "I've got you," he said. "I've got you, Em. I have a family," Hannah whispered. The words sounded like a prayer. "I actually have a family." Catherine was there then, wrapping both of them in her arms. "You've always had a family, sweetheart. Always. We just lost each other for a while." They spent the rest of the morning calling lawyers, updating records, beginning the complicated process of legally restoring Emily's identity. Hannah, Emily, sat through it all in a daze, signing papers that transformed her from an orphaned waitress into the daughter of one of New York's wealthiest families. "This is insane," she kept saying. "Yesterday I was worried about making rent." "You don't have to worry about that anymore," Catherine assured her. "You don't have to worry about anything. You're home now." By afternoon, the news had spread through the household staff. The Monroe daughter, missing for 18 years, had returned. It was like something out of a fairy tale. Judith showed up around 3 o'clock, carrying flowers and wearing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I heard the wonderful news," she said, embracing Catherine. "A miracle, an absolute miracle." She turned to Emily. "Welcome home, dear. Truly." Emily smiled politely, though something about Judith made her uncomfortable. The woman was trying too hard, like an actor playing a role. "Thank you, Aunt Judith," Emily said, testing out the title. It felt strange on her tongue. "I brought some old photo albums," Judith said, settling onto the couch. "Pictures from when you were little. I thought they might help with your memory." They spent an hour looking through albums, Judith pointing out various moments. "That's you at the park. That's your 5th birthday party. Oh, and this was the summer we all went to the Hamptons." Emily studied the photos, searching for recognition. Some sparked faint memories. Others remained stubbornly blank. "Do you remember the day I got lost?" Emily asked suddenly. "Were you there?" Judith's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. "I was there for so many days." "Sweetie, which one do you mean?" "The day I disappeared, at the street market." "Oh," Judith's hands tightened on the album. "No, I wasn't there that day. That was just you and your mother." Catherine frowned. "Actually, Judith, you were..." "Was I?" Judith interrupted quickly. "It's been so long I can hardly remember. All those days blur together." She stood abruptly. "I should go. I'm sure you all have a lot to catch up on." After Judith left, Emily turned to Catherine. "Was she there that day?" Catherine opened her mouth to answer, then paused. Had Judith been there? The memories of that day were so traumatic, so fragmented. Catherine had spent 18 years trying not to think about the details. I'm not sure," she admitted. "Everything from that day is mixed up in my head." But later, when Emily was upstairs and Michael was back in his office, Catherine sat alone in the living room and tried to piece together that terrible afternoon. The crowded market, the noise and chaos. She'd needed to use the restroom. She'd asked someone to watch Emily. Who had that been? A flash of memory. Judith on her phone, waving Catherine away. "Go ahead. I've got her." Catherine's stomach dropped. Judith had been there. She was certain of it now. So why had Judith just lied? Upstairs, Emily lay on her bed. Her childhood bed. staring at the ceiling. She should have been happy, deliriously, impossibly happy. She had everything she'd ever dreamed of: a mother who loved her, a brother, a home. But tucked under her pillow was an envelope Judith had slipped her when no one was looking. Inside were photocopies of documents, legal papers, forms with Catherine's signature, papers that seemed to show Catherine had voluntarily surrendered her to the state. "Don't trust everything you're told," Judith had whispered. "Sometimes the people who claim to love us are the ones who hurt us most." Emily wanted to throw the papers away, wanted to believe they were fake, but a small voice in her head whispered doubts. Why hadn't Catherine found her? St. Joseph's wasn't that far away. If Catherine had really been looking, wouldn't she have found her? Emily touched the bracelet on her wrist, the one her mother said she'd given her, the one that had brought her home. But what if home was just another lie? The documents haunted Emily for days. She'd hidden them in a drawer, but they might as well have been branded on her brain. Every time Catherine hugged her or called her sweetheart, Emily felt the weight of those papers pressing against her conscience. Finally, one morning when Catherine was out meeting with lawyers about Emily's legal restoration, Emily couldn't take it anymore. She pulled out the envelope and spread the papers across her bed. There were 3 documents. The first appeared to be a surrender form from the Department of Child Services. Dated 18 years ago, Catherine's signature was at the bottom, clear as day. The second was a statement claiming Emily had been a disruption to family stability, and that placement in state care was in the child's best interest. The third was a handwritten note on Monroe family letterhead that simply read, "She's better off without me." Emily's hands shook as she read them over and over. They looked official, real, but they contradicted everything Catherine had told her about searching desperately for her lost daughter. Someone was lying. The question was who? A soft knock on her door made her jump. She quickly shoved the papers back in the drawer. "Come in," she called. Michael stepped inside, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this. You've been holed up in here all morning." Emily accepted the coffee gratefully. "Just thinking." Michael sat on the edge of her bed, the same spot where Catherine used to sit and sing lullabies. "About everything. This is all so much. You know, a week ago, I was nobody. Now I'm Emily Monroe, daughter of wealth and privilege. How am I supposed to just be that person?" "You don't have to be anyone but yourself," Michael said. "The name doesn't change who you are inside." Emily wanted to believe that, but the papers in her drawer suggested that who she was inside might be someone nobody had wanted. "Can I ask you something?" she said carefully. "That day I disappeared. What do you remember about it?" Michael's expression darkened. "I wasn't there. I was 12, at a friend's house. I remember Mom calling, hysterical, saying you were gone. I remember the police coming to the house. I remember weeks of searching and hoping and slowly realizing you weren't coming back." He looked at her. "Why?" "Just trying to piece things together. Mom said she's not sure exactly what happened. Everything from that day is fuzzy for her. Trauma does that," Michael said. "She blamed herself for years. Still does, I think. The guilt nearly destroyed her." Emily thought about the surrender papers. If they were real, Catherine had no reason to feel guilty. She'd chosen to give Emily away, but looking at Michael's face, at the genuine pain there when he talked about losing her, Emily couldn't reconcile that with the idea of a family that simply didn't want her. "Michael," she started, then stopped. Should she tell him about the documents? Show him what Judith had given her? "What is it?" he asked. Before she could answer, Catherine's voice called up from downstairs. "Emily, Michael, are you home? Up here?" "Mom," Michael called back. Catherine appeared in the doorway moments later, her face flushed with excitement. "I have news. The lawyers say we can fast-track everything. Within a month, all your documents will reflect your real name. Birth certificate, social security, everything." Emily forced a smile. "That's great." Catherine's excitement dimmed slightly. "You don't seem happy about it." "I am," Emily said quickly. It's a lot to process." Catherine sat beside her, taking her hand. "I know this is overwhelming, sweetheart, but you don't have to do anything you're not comfortable with. We can slow down if you need to." Emily looked into her mother's eyes, searching for deception. All she saw was love and concern. Did you ever stop looking for me? The question clearly caught Catherine off guard. What? No, never. Even after the police gave up, even after everyone said I needed to move on, I kept searching. I've had private investigators on retainer for years. I posted on every missing children's website. I never stopped hoping you'd come home. But you didn't find me, Emily said, hating how her voice sounded. Accusing, bitter. Joseph's is only 2 hours away. How did you miss me? Catherine's face crumpled. I've asked myself that same question every day for 18 years. I looked at every orphanage in the state database. But St. Joseph's is private, independently run. They weren't in the system. By the time I found out about them and sent an investigator, you'd already aged out and left. Tears streamed down her face. I failed you, Emily. I know I did. But it wasn't because I didn't try. It was never because I didn't want you. Emily felt her own eyes burning. She wanted to believe Catherine. Every instinct told her to trust this woman who'd welcomed her so completely. But the papers in her drawer whispered different truths. Michael, sensing the tension, stood. I'm going to give you two some space. He squeezed Emily's shoulder on his way out. Whatever you're worried about, we'll figure it out together. That's what families do. After he left, Catherine and Emily sat in silence for a long moment. I feel like there are things I should remember, Emily finally said. Important things about that day, about what happened, but it's all just out of reach. The doctors said your memories might never fully return, Catherine reminded her gently. We may never know exactly what happened, but we have each other now. Can't that be enough? Emily nodded, even as doubt gnawed at her insides. She thought about asking about the documents directly, but something held her back. If they were fake, she'd hurt Catherine for no reason, and if they were real, she wasn't ready to face what that would mean. That evening, Judith called. Catherine put her on speaker while making dinner. Just checking in on our girl, Judith said, her voice saccharine sweet. How is she adjusting? She's doing wonderfully, Catherine said, though Emily could hear the uncertainty beneath her mother's words. Good, listen, Catherine. I've been thinking, maybe Emily should talk to someone, a therapist, I mean, to help process everything. That's not a bad idea, Catherine agreed. I know someone excellent, Dr. Reynolds, very discreet. I could set up an appointment if you'd like. Emily stiffened. Something about the way Judith offered felt wrong, too eager, too helpful. We'll think about it, Catherine said noncommittally. After they hung up, Emily turned to her mother. Why is Aunt Judith so interested in whether I see a therapist? Catherine considered the question. I think she just wants to help. This affects the whole family, after all, but Emily wasn't so sure. In her experience, people who pushed too hard usually had their own agenda, and Judith was definitely pushing. Michael couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It had been gnawing at him for days. Small inconsistencies, strange reactions, the way Judith's story kept shifting. He'd built a successful business by trusting his instincts. And right now, those instincts were screaming that his aunt was hiding something. He made the call on a Thursday morning from his office, watching the rain streak down the windows. Dalton Investigations, a gruff voice answered. Mr. Dalton, this is Michael Monroe. I need you to look into something for me, quietly. Richard Dalton had worked for the Monroe family before, tracking down leads about Emily over the years. He was thorough, discreet, and expensive. Exactly what Michael needed. What am I looking for? Dalton asked. The day my sister disappeared, 18 years ago. I need to know exactly what happened, who was there, what the timeline was, everything. And I need you to focus on my aunt. Judith Monroe. There was a pause. You think your aunt knows something? I think she's lying about something. I just don't know what yet. Give me a week, Dalton said. It took 5 days. Michael was reviewing quarterly reports when his phone buzzed with Dalton's number. He answered immediately. What did you find? You're not going to like it, Dalton said. I tracked down James Chen, your family's driver from back then. He's retired now, living in Queens. Took some convincing, but he talked. Michael's grip tightened on the phone. And, according to Chen, Judith was with your mother and Emily at the market that day. Your mother asked her to watch Emily while she used the restroom. Chen was waiting with the car about a block away. He saw Judith on her phone, not paying attention. When your mother came back, both Judith and Emily were gone. Michael's blood ran cold. What do you mean, gone? Chen said Judith showed up at the car about 10 minutes later, alone, in a panic. Told him Emily had wandered off and they needed to find her. But here's the thing. Chen said Judith made him promise not to mention she'd been the one watching Emily. She told him Catherine had left the girl alone, and if he contradicted that story, he'd lose his job. Jesus Christ, Michael breathed. There's more. I pulled the original police reports. In her statement, Judith claimed she wasn't with them that day at all, said she'd been shopping elsewhere. Catherine's statement says she can't remember if Judith was there or not. The trauma had fragmented her memory. But Chen's testimony contradicts Judith's story completely. Michael felt sick. She lied. She let my mother think it was her fault for 18 years. Looks that way? I've got Chen's written statement if you need it. He's willing to testify to what he saw if it comes to that. Send me everything, Michael said. And Dalton, not a word about this to anyone yet. After he hung up, Michael sat in silence, staring at nothing. His aunt, the woman who'd lived in their house, who'd comforted his mother through years of grief, who'd positioned herself as the supportive sister, had been lying the entire time. She'd been responsible for Emily's disappearance. And instead of admitting it, instead of facing the consequences, she'd let Catherine destroy herself with guilt. Michael wanted to drive straight home and confront her, wanted to expose her in front of everyone. But something held him back. If Judith had lied about this, what else had she lied about? And more importantly, what would she do if she felt cornered? He thought about Emily, still fragile, still piecing together her identity. This revelation could shatter her all over again. No, Michael decided. He needed to be smart about this. Strategic. He spent the weekend gathering evidence. Dalton sent over Chen's statement, the original police reports, and a timeline that clearly showed the holes in Judith's story. Michael compiled it all into a folder, adding his own notes and observations. On Sunday evening, he found Judith in the mansion's library, reading a magazine and sipping wine like she didn't have a care in the world. We need to talk, Michael said, closing the door behind him. Judith looked up, her expression pleasant but wary. Of course, dear. What about? Michael set the folder on the table between them. About the day Emily disappeared. All the color drained from Judith's face. Michael, I don't think... I talked to James Chen, Michael said flatly. Our old driver, he remembers that day very clearly. He remembers you being there. He remembers you being the one who was supposed to be watching Emily. Judith's hand trembled as she set down her wine glass. That's ridiculous. He's confused. It's been 18 years. He's not confused. Michael's voice was hard as steel. You were on your phone. You got distracted. Emily wandered off. And instead of taking responsibility, you lied. You told Chen to say Mom had left Emily alone. You made him choose between his job and the truth. Michael, please. How could you? The words came out raw, full of pain and rage. How could you let her suffer like that? Do you have any idea what the guilt did to her? She blamed herself for 18 years. 18 years, Judith. Judith stood abruptly, her composure cracking. It was an accident. I only looked away for a second. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. But it did happen. And you lied about it. You saved yourself and threw my mother to the wolves. Tears were streaming down Judith's face now. I was scared. I thought Catherine would hate me. I thought I'd lose everything. My family. My home. You have to understand. I panicked. So you let her think it was her fault instead. Michael shook his head in disgust. That's not panic, Judith. That's cowardice. Judith sank back into her chair, sobbing. What are you going to do? Michael looked at his aunt. This woman he'd known his whole life, who'd read him bedtime stories when he was little, who'd taught him to play chess, and he felt nothing but contempt. I'm going to tell them the truth, he said. All of it. Mom deserves to know. Emily deserves to know. Michael, please. Judith grabbed his arm desperately. Don't do this. I know I was wrong. I know I should have told the truth years ago, but if you expose me now, it'll destroy me. I'll have nothing left. Michael pulled his arm free. You should have thought about that 18 years ago. He picked up the folder and walked toward the door. When? Judith asked, her voice small and broken. Michael paused at the threshold. Soon, I need to figure out the right way to tell them, but make no mistake, the truth is coming out. You can't run from it anymore. He left her there, crying into her hands in the dim library. As Michael climbed the stairs to his room, he saw Emily standing in the hallway, her face pale. "How much did you hear?" he asked quietly. "Enough," she whispered. "She was the one who lost me, and she let your mom think it was her fault all this time." Michael nodded grimly. "I was going to tell you and Mom together. I'm sorry you found out this way." Emily was silent for a long moment. "Those documents she gave me, the ones that said Mom surrendered me voluntarily, they were fake, weren't they?" "What documents?" Michael asked sharply. Emily pulled the envelope from her pocket and handed it to him. Michael scanned the papers, his jaw clenching tighter with each page. "These are forgeries," he said. "Good ones, but forgeries. Judith was trying to turn you against Mom, to protect herself." Emily felt something crack open inside her chest. Relief mixed with rage. "I want to be there. When you tell her the truth, Catherine deserves to hear it from both of us." Michael squeezed her shoulder. "Tomorrow. We'll tell her tomorrow." Michael found Judith in the library the next morning, staring out the window like she'd been waiting for the executioner. "We need to talk," he said, his voice cold and controlled. "Now." Judith turned slowly. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her makeup smudged. She looked like she'd aged 10 years overnight. "Michael, please." "I spoke with James Chen." Michael cut her off. "Our old driver. He remembers that day very clearly." The blood drained from Judith's face. "I don't know what you're—" "Don't." Michael's voice cracked like a whip. "Don't lie to me anymore. Chen told me everything. You were supposed to be watching Emily. You got distracted with a phone call. She wandered off. And then you lied about it." Judith gripped the back of a chair, her knuckles white. "Michael, you have to understand." "Understand what?" "That you were too much of a coward to take responsibility. That you let my mother blame herself for 18 years while you played the supportive sister. It wasn't like that." Judith's voice rose, desperate. "I was terrified. It all happened so fast. One moment Emily was right there. The next she was gone. I looked everywhere. I swear I did. But when Catherine came back and Emily was missing, I panicked. So you lied. You told Chen to say Mom had left Emily alone. You made him choose between his job and the truth." Judith's legs gave out. She sank into the chair, her whole body shaking. I thought if Catherine knew it was my fault, she'd never forgive me. I'd already lost my husband. This family was all I had left. I couldn't lose that too. So you let her torture herself instead." Michael's disgust was palpable. "Do you have any idea what that guilt did to her? She stopped sleeping, stopped eating. There were nights I thought she might not make it through." Tears streamed down Judith's face. "I know, God, Michael. I know I've lived with this every single day, watching her suffer, knowing it should have been me. It's been my own private hell. Not private enough," Michael said coldly. "You still lived in this house, still ate her food, still accepted her comfort while she blamed herself for your mistake." Judith looked up at him, her face destroyed by grief and shame. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to tell them, Mom and Emily. They deserve to know the truth." "Michael, please." Judith stood, reaching for him. "Please don't. It won't change anything. It won't bring back the lost years. It'll just hurt everyone more." "The truth always hurts," Michael said. "But lies destroy. Look what they've already done. If you tell them I'll lose everything, you already lost everything. You just haven't admitted it yet." Michael turned toward the door. "Wait." Judith's voice was barely a whisper. "There's more. Things I did after Emily came back." Michael froze. Slowly, he turned around. "What things?" Judith's face crumpled. "I gave Emily documents, forged papers that made it look like Catherine had surrendered her voluntarily. I told her not to trust you. I tried to turn her against the family." Michael's hands clenched into fists. "Why?" "Because I was afraid. If Emily remembered that day, if she remembered who was supposed to be watching her, everything would fall apart. I thought if I could make her doubt Catherine, make her leave before the memories came back, you tried to destroy their relationship to save yourself." Michael's voice was dangerously quiet. "That's not panic, Judith. That's malice. I was desperate. You were selfish. Michael pulled out his phone. I'm calling Mom and Emily. We're settling this now. No, please. Give me a chance to explain it myself. Let me tell them. I deserve at least that much. Michael considered her for a long moment. You deserve nothing, but fine. You tell them. Right now. All of it. 10 minutes later, they were all gathered in the living room. Catherine sat on the couch, confused and worried by the urgency. Emily stood by the fireplace, her arms crossed, her face unreadable. Michael positioned himself near the door, whether to keep Judith from leaving or himself from attacking her. He wasn't sure. What's this about? Catherine asked. Michael, you're scaring me. Michael looked at Judith. Tell them. Judith's hands trembled. She looked at Catherine, then at Emily, and saw in their faces the end of everything. I need to tell you both something. About the day Emily disappeared. Catherine went very still. What about it? I was there. I was supposed to be watching her. The words came out in a rush, like poison she needed to expel. You asked me to keep an eye on her while you went to the restroom. I said yes, but then David called. My ex-husband. We were fighting about the divorce. I got distracted, and when I looked up, Emily was gone. Catherine's face went white. What? I looked everywhere. I swear I did, but I couldn't find her. And when you came back, I was so scared you'd hate me, so I told Chen to say you'd left her alone. I let you think it was your fault. The silence that followed was deafening. Catherine stood slowly, her whole body trembling. You let me think. For 18 years. You let me believe I'd failed her. I'm so sorry, Judith sobbed. I was wrong. I was a coward. But I was scared, Catherine. I'd already lost everything else. I couldn't lose you too. So you let me lose myself instead. Catherine's voice cracked. I wanted to die, Judith. There were nights I stood on the balcony and considered jumping. Because I thought I was the reason my daughter was gone. And you knew the truth the whole time. Emily spoke for the first time, her voice like ice. Tell her the rest. Judith looked at Emily with desperate eyes. Please, tell her about the documents. Emily pressed. Tell her how you tried to turn me against her. Catherine looked between them. What documents? Judith gave me forged papers, Emily said, pulling them from her pocket. Papers that said you'd voluntarily surrendered me to the state. She told me not to trust you. That you never really wanted me. Catherine's hand flew to her mouth. She looked at her sister with an expression of such complete betrayal that Judith physically recoiled. How could you? Catherine whispered. How could you do that to us? I was trying to protect myself, Judith admitted. I thought if Emily remembered, if she figured out I was responsible. So you tried to destroy the one miracle I'd been given. Catherine's voice rose to a shout. You weren't content with stealing 18 years. You wanted to take the future too. Catherine, please, get out. Catherine's voice was steel. Get out of my house. Get out of my life. You don't mean that. Get out. Catherine screamed it this time, her composure finally shattering. You're dead to me. You hear me? Dead. Michael stepped forward. I'll have your things packed and sent. You have 1 hour to leave the property. Judith looked at each of them in turn. Catherine's fury, Emily's cold disdain, Michael's contempt, and she knew there was no coming back from this. I'm sorry, she whispered one last time. Your sorry means nothing, Catherine said. Now get out before I call the police. Judith walked to the door on shaking legs. At the threshold, she turned back one more time. For what it's worth, I'm glad Emily's home. I'm glad you found each other. Don't, Emily said quietly. Don't you dare act like you care. You tried to keep us apart. Judith nodded, tears streaming down her face. Then she walked out, closing the door behind her. The three of them stood in silence. The truth finally laid bare between them. For a long moment after Judith left, no one moved. The silence in the living room felt heavy, oppressive, like the air before a thunderstorm finally breaks. Catherine stood frozen, staring at the door her sister had just walked through. Her hands shook. Her breathing came in short. Sharp gasps. Mom. Michael moved toward her carefully, like approaching someone on a ledge. 18 years. Catherine whispered. 18 years. I blamed myself. I stopped living. I stopped being a mother to you, Michael, because I was so consumed with guilt. And it was all a lie. Emily crossed to her, hesitant. Catherine, I'm so sorry, Catherine said, turning to Emily with tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry I didn't find you. I looked. I swear I did. But I was searching the wrong places because I didn't know the truth. If I'd known Judith was the one who lost you, I might have remembered more. Search differently. Stop, Emily said firmly, taking Catherine's hands. This isn't your fault. None of it was ever your fault. But I should have... No. Emily's voice was stronger now, more certain. Judith made her choices. She chose to lie. She chose to let you suffer. That's on her, not you. Catherine pulled Emily into a fierce embrace, sobbing against her daughter's shoulder. I've wasted so much time hating myself. Then don't waste any more, Emily said softly, her own tears falling. We're here now. That's what matters. Michael joined them, wrapping his arms around both women. For several minutes, they just held each other, letting the truth settle over them like dust after an explosion. Finally, Catherine pulled back, wiping her eyes. I need to sit down. They moved to the couch, Catherine in the middle with Emily and Michael on either side. Catherine kept one hand clasped in Emily's, as if afraid she might disappear again. Tell me about the documents, Catherine said, looking at Emily. What exactly did Judith show you? Emily retrieved the envelope and handed it over. Catherine examined each paper with growing horror. These are good forgeries, she said quietly. Very good. My signature looks perfect. She looked at Emily. And you believed them? Emily hesitated. I wanted not to, but I kept thinking, why didn't you find me? St. Joseph's wasn't that far away. If you'd really been looking. I was looking, Catherine insisted. But St. Joseph's is private, independently funded. They weren't in the state database. By the time one of my investigators found them and checked, you'd already aged out and left. She squeezed Emily's hand. I never stopped searching. Never. I know that now, Emily said. But when Judith showed me those papers, all my old insecurities came flooding back. The feeling that I wasn't wanted, that I was discarded. Never, Catherine said fiercely. You were wanted. You've always been wanted. From the moment you were born, you were the most precious thing in my world. Michael spoke up. Judith was protecting herself. She knew if Emily remembered that day, the truth would come out. So she tried to drive a wedge between you, make Emily leave before her memory fully returned. It almost worked, Emily admitted. There were moments I was ready to walk away, to go back to my old life and forget all of this. Why didn't you? Catherine asked. Emily touched the bracelet on her wrist. Because of this. Because deep down I knew you loved me. I felt it every time you looked at me. That wasn't something that could be faked. Catherine's eyes filled with fresh tears. Oh, sweetheart. And because of the piano, Emily continued, when you played that lullaby, when the memories came flooding back, I knew then that you were my mother, not because of DNA or documents or evidence, because my heart recognized you. They sat together for a while, processing everything that had been revealed. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the room in shades of gold and amber. What do we do now? Michael finally asked. About Judith. I mean, do we press charges? She forged documents. She's guilty of fraud at minimum. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Part of me wants to see her punished, wants her to feel even a fraction of the pain she caused. But another part of me just wants her gone. I don't want to spend the next year in court, reliving all of this. I just want to move forward with my family. So we let her get away with it, Michael asked, his voice tight with anger. We're not letting her get away with anything, Catherine said. She lost her home. She lost her family. She'll spend the rest of her life knowing what she destroyed through her cowardice. That's punishment enough. Emily nodded slowly. I agree. She's already lost everything that mattered. Making her pay legally won't give us back the years we missed. Michael wanted to argue, wanted justice in a more concrete form. But looking at his mother and sister, at the peace beginning to settle over their faces, he understood. Sometimes the best revenge was simply moving on and being happy, despite what someone tried to take from you. Okay, he said. But if she tries to contact any of us, if she comes near this house again, she won't, Catherine said with certainty. Judith's many things, but she's not stupid. She knows the bridge is burned. There's no coming back from this. Emily leaned her head on Catherine's shoulder. Can I ask you something? Anything, sweetheart. What was I like before I disappeared? What kind of kid was I? Catherine smiled, the first genuine smile since the confrontation began. You were curious about everything, always asking questions. Why is the sky blue? Where do stars go during the day? How do birds know how to fly? She laughed softly. You drove us crazy sometimes, but in the best way. You loved books, Michael added. Always had your nose in a story, and you were terrible at hide and seek because you'd always giggle and give yourself away. You were kind, Catherine continued. So kind it sometimes worried me. You'd give your lunch to kids who forgot theirs. You rescued every injured bug or bird you found. You had this huge, generous heart. Emily felt tears prick her eyes. I wish I remembered more. You will, Catherine assured her. Now that the truth is out, now that you're not carrying Judith's lies, I think the memories will come more easily. And for the ones that don't come back, we'll make new ones, better ones. Together, Emily said. Together, Catherine agreed. Michael stood, stretching. I'm going to make sure Judith actually leaves. Check that her things are packed and she's off the property. After he left, Catherine and Emily sat together in comfortable silence, watching the last light fade from the sky. Mom, Emily said softly, testing the word. Yes, baby. I'm glad I'm home. Catherine kissed the top of her daughter's head. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. Outside, Judith Monroe loaded the last box into her car and took one final look at the mansion that had been her home for so many years. She'd lost everything, just like she'd always feared. The difference was, this time, she deserved it. 6 months later, the mansion looked different. Not physically. The same ivy still climbed the brick walls. The same gardens bloomed in careful rows. But the energy had changed. Where there had once been silence and grief, there was now laughter. Where shadows had lingered, light poured through open windows. Emily stood in the kitchen, arguing good-naturedly with the chef about the menu for Michael's birthday party that evening. I'm telling you, he hates asparagus, she insisted. Miss Emily, I've been cooking for Mr. Michael for 8 years. He loves asparagus. Trust me on this, Emily grinned. He's been lying to you to be polite. Catherine walked in, laughing at the exchange. She's right, Marcus. Michael's been pretending to like asparagus since he was 12. The chef threw up his hands in mock defeat. Fine, no asparagus, but I'm making the salmon my way. Deal, Emily said, stealing a cookie from the cooling rack. Catherine watched her daughter move around the kitchen with easy confidence. So different from the nervous, uncertain young woman who'd first walked through these doors. Emily had blossomed in the months since Judith left. The shadows in her eyes had faded, replaced by genuine happiness. She'd started working with Michael at the restaurants, discovering a natural talent for business that surprised them both. She was good with people, good at solving problems, and had creative ideas about menu development and customer experience. Michael had already promoted her twice, but more than that, she'd become part of the family in every way that mattered. Game nights where Emily's competitive streak came out, long walks in the garden where she and Catherine talked about everything and nothing, Sunday dinners where the three of them shared stories and made new memories to replace the lost ones. Mom, Emily's voice pulled Catherine from her thoughts. You okay? Just happy, Catherine said truthfully. Really, truly happy. Emily crossed to her, linking their arms. Me too. They walked out to the garden together, where preparations for the party were underway. White lights strung through the trees, tables set with elegant linens, a small band setting up on the terrace. This is too much for just a birthday, Emily said, though she was smiling. It's not just a birthday, Catherine corrected. It's a celebration of family, of second chances, of everything we almost lost and found again. Michael appeared from around the corner, his tie already loosened despite the party not having started. I can hear you two planning from inside. Please tell me you didn't hire an ice sculptor. Only a small one, Emily teased. I'm 32, not 5, but you're still our baby, Catherine said. kissing his cheek. Michael groaned, but he was smiling, looking at his mother and sister together. Seeing them so comfortable with each other made everything they'd been through worth it. The party that evening was intimate, just close friends and family. No Judith, of course. They'd heard through the grapevine that she'd moved to Boston, was living in a small apartment and working as a receptionist. Catherine felt nothing about it, which was perhaps the best outcome. Not forgiveness exactly, but indifference. Judith no longer had the power to hurt her. As the evening wore on and the music played, Catherine found herself at the piano. She hadn't planned to play, but her fingers found the keys almost automatically. The opening notes of "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star" drifted across the garden. Emily, who'd been laughing with guests, froze. Then slowly, drawn by the melody, she made her way to the piano. She sat beside her mother on the bench, just like she had when she was a child. Without words, they began to play together, Emily joining in on the higher notes, Catherine holding the melody. Their voices joined too, soft and harmonious. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are." The guests quieted, watching the moment unfold. Michael stood back, his chest tight with emotion. When the song ended, Emily leaned her head on Catherine's shoulder. "I remember this. All of it now. Every lullaby, every story, every goodnight kiss. It all came back." "All of it?" Catherine asked softly. "Even that day," Emily said. "I remember the market, the crowds, Aunt Judith on her phone, frustrated about something. I saw a balloon vendor and wandered over. By the time I realized I'd gone too far, I couldn't find my way back. I was scared, crying. That's when everything went dark. I think I must have panicked so badly that my mind just shut down." Catherine's arms tightened around her. "I'm so sorry you went through that alone." "I wasn't alone," Emily said. "Not really, because even when I couldn't remember your face, I remembered feeling loved. That got me through the hard years, knowing somewhere, somehow, someone had cared about me. I never stopped caring," Catherine whispered. "Not for a single day." "I know." Emily straightened, adjusting the silver bracelet on her wrist, the one she never took off. This bracelet kept its promise. It brought me home. Michael joined them at the piano. "Speech time?" he asked. Emily stood, surprising herself with her own confidence. She clinked a fork against her glass, and the garden fell silent. "I'm not great at speeches," she began, "but I want to say something. 6 months ago, I was lost. Not just physically lost like I was 18 years ago, but lost in every way that matters. I didn't know who I was or where I belonged." She looked at Catherine and Michael. And then I found my family, or they found me, and everything changed. I learned that home isn't just a place. It's the people who refuse to give up on you, who search for you even when everyone else has stopped looking, who welcome you back even after 18 years. Her voice caught. "I learned that the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than the most comfortable lie. And I learned that some bonds are so strong that not even time can break them." Catherine was openly crying now. "So this toast isn't just for Michael's birthday," Emily continued, raising her glass. "It's for second chances, for truth, for family that never gives up, and for coming home." "To coming home," the guests echoed, raising their glasses. As the party continued into the night, the three of them found themselves together in the garden. Away from the crowd, the lights twinkled overhead like stars. Music drifted on the warm breeze. "Are you happy?" Catherine asked Emily. "Truly happy? Not just saying it to make me feel better." Emily considered the question seriously. "You know what? I am. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, with the people I'm supposed to be with." "No regrets about the life you left behind?" Michael asked. "That wasn't a life," Emily said. "That was just survival. This is living." They stood together, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. The pain of the past was still there. It always would be, but it had softened into something manageable, something that made them appreciate the present more. "Mom," Emily said quietly, "thank you for never giving up on me." Catherine took her daughter's hand, felt the familiar weight of the silver bracelet between them. "Thank you for finding your way back." As the last light faded from the garden, they understood something profound. The past no longer held power over them. It was simply that. The past. What mattered now was this moment, and all the moments to come, together, finally and completely whole. They walked back toward the lights and laughter of home, and 18 years of searching,